So hello, everybody. Welcome to Jason Learning. I'm Jude Kessel, and I will be your host for today's STEM Career Role Model event. Our guest today is Dr. Joshua Blackwell. Josh has a Doctor of Pharmacy degree and is currently the Clinical Pharmacy Manager, Ambulatory Services at UT Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas, Texas. But before pursuing his career, Josh was a student like all of you out there, and he was actually selected to be a Jason Student Argonaut in, shall I say it, Josh?
Yes, you should say it. Go ahead.
2005 in Disappearing Wetlands, which is a current Jason curriculum. So it's amazing to have him back to hear what he's done since his Jason days and how those experiences may have influenced his career path. So we're going to learn a lot more about his work, his career, and we'll be asking Josh questions that were submitted by Jason students. Welcome, Dr. Blackwell. That's so cool to say. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you today and to tell you a little bit about my journey and to discuss anything and everything that you guys may want to. I can't believe that it's been so long ago since I was a Jason Argonaut, but it's been such a rewarding career, and this organization has really helped me define my career path. So without further ado, this is where it started for me. Just like Jude mentioned, I was an Argonaut in 2005, and just a couple short years ago in the wetlands, and was fortunate enough to visit the wetlands in Louisiana right before Hurricane Katrina. And many of the things, and Jude and I were just talking about this, many of the things that we were anticipating, expecting, forecasting, predicting happened with Hurricane Katrina. So although devastating to hear, the Jason Project and Jason Learning are a great resource and really make sure that students such as yourself, and I'm a forever student, are really looking and being the frontline individuals and also the leaders in STEM. So with your mathematics and sciences and any occupation that you may go into. So it started here in the swamps of Louisiana, where I did that. And then I knew that I wanted to do something in sciences. And my parents said, "You just came from Jason. You don't want to just go straight into business. You actually want to do something in sciences. Have you thought about doing something in sciences?" And I said, "Well, what profession kind of ties both into play?" And that was pharmacy. I went to visit University of Toledo, was a part of a program and did that, and went through pharmacy. And so that's where I went to Ohio Northern University, graduated with my doctorate of pharmacy degree. And then while I was a pharmacy student, I also was an intern, matter of fact, the chief pharmacy intern at Cleveland Clinic, where we, not only compounded medications, we prepared medications to take to the patient floors in the hospital, but I also made sure to stay actively involved in professional associations or organizations. And one of those happened to be the Student National Pharmaceutical Association. So between Cleveland Clinic and SNAFA, I really knew that I wanted to be in pharmacy and be a leader in the profession. So much so that I became national president of the Student National Pharmaceutical Association and saw the organization grow and created different programs and platforms and help students such as myself, once again, really be advocates in serving the underserved. And then from there, I actually did my residency program. So after pharmacy school, you have the opportunity to do postgraduate training. So whether that is you go into a fellowship program where you're doing industries such as Eli Lilly or Merck, those big drug companies that make the medications, you can actually work for those companies. But also you can really learn clinical skills, more sciences, more studying, more taking care of patients. And that was with the CHI St. Luke's Health, Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center. And within that program, which is one of the hospital affiliated with the Houston program, I received my Master's of Sciences as well. So full-time resident, so learning, taking care of patients, rounding with teams and physicians and learning how to take care of patients. I also was still in school. So an ever evolving student. And I was able to do that. And then my first job was being a clinical pharmacy manager at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Maryland. So was very fortunate to go there into another big academic medical center and worked with some incredible people and learned a whole lot when it came to leading teams, managing patients, and the whole 9 yards. And then from there, I'm in my current role. I'm at UT Southwestern Medical Center, or UTSW, and I manage ambulatory services there. And so was very fortunate enough to still be in this academic medical center, a very renowned academic medical center where we're taking care of patients, but I'm solely focused on how do we take care of patients once they leave the hospital into our clinics. So think about your doctor's visits. You're going for your physical and checkup. There could be a pharmacist there that's reviewing your medications, as well as may come and see you and do some medication and teaching that way. So I get to manage that team and several other things within UT Southwestern, such as making medications that you get in an IV, as well as a lot of different opportunities, and also being a part of the residency program, which I created alongside this organization, was a phenomenal thing. And we're still creating that under a lot of the leadership here. I'm fortunate to help coordinate that and really bring on the first resident here. So it's a team effort. And so it's definitely not an I. And so you'll continue to hear that throughout this quick presentation before we get into Q&A. So what I want to talk about with you guys and really help impact with you guys is leadership. So we've been in a pandemic. You heard that in 2005, I was in the wetlands and we experienced the pandemic shortly thereafter with Hurricane Katrina, because that may not have been an illness, but it certainly was a profound event that affected a lot of people. And COVID is no different. But what I want to say is that we can be our own pandemic. We can be the change in leadership in STEM when it comes to sciences, mathematics, and the Jason project and the Jason learning experience can be that avenue where you as students can really be that change. So remember, the leader is not in front. The leader is actually behind, really pushing. The leader is in front, pushing and pulling the work through, pulling the advocacy through, pulling the patient care through. And that's something that always needs to happen. And so leaders are forward thinking, just like Jason. Who would have thought to go to the wetlands and really expose maybe some of the environmental factors that are happening and kind of shaping the wetlands? Because the wetlands, we consider that the kidneys of our bodies. They really clear out and filter a lot of the things that happen for purifying water, cleaning the environment. And we were students that were telling millions of people this information. And so across the world, when it comes to the Jason Project, under the fantastic work of Dr. Robert Ballard. And so how do you do that? You have to be forward thinking. And so they taught us, Jude taught us, and really inspired us to be forward thinking when we were out there as Argonauts. You have to be authentic, be true to yourself. Each and every one of you has a strength. And so one of my strengths was leading and hosting a webinar as I'm doing now. That didn't start after I graduated pharmacy school. That started in the Jason learning experience. And I had to leave those things. And unfortunately, they made me eat oysters. But throughout that, I was learning and doing a lot of different things, but being my true authentic self. And they allowed me to do that as a student. So each and every single one of you has significant strength, significant availability to really go out and be that change. Integrity. So be honest with yourself, be honest towards others. There can be a lot of evil and hate in the world, but through your leadership in science and mathematics and technology and research, you guys can be that change by showcasing integrity, making sure that you are publishing or you are promoting or you are talking about things that are truthful, factual, and presenting that data so you can educate others. Because once again, leadership is all about helping others and pushing that whatever profession that you do, whatever purpose that you have forward. and leaving that legacy. So Dr. Robert Ballard, he was the guy that did the Titanic. You know, that's what we knew. That's what we learned about. I was part of the Jason Learning experience in the 6th grade under Kim Rado, and she taught us about that and how that he was going out there and he discovered the Titanic, and that he wanted to give back and really showcase the research and propel students forward. That's creating a legacy. So that created a legacy that allowed me to be in the Jason Learning experience, go to pharmacy school, be in the profession, and create various avenues for other students. But it has to start with you. So Dr. Robert Ballard was that change. That's why we're here today. That's why I'm a former Argonaut. That helped me get into science and research and understand the importance of sciences and how we discover new things. And now I'm passing that information on to you and the teachers and the faculty there, including Jude here on the line right now. We are here to instill that in you so you can create your own legacy by building off of what's being taught to you today. And so another important thing is that you have to fail forward. Always, always fail forward. Do not doubt yourself. Do not doubt the purpose that's inside of you. Always fail forward because leaders, they have failed. You may see them in the limelight. You may see that Dr. Robert Ballard, he's this guy that created the Jason Learning experience. And if you ever meet him, he's such a humble guy because he has failed in his life and we have all failed forward. I failed in the wetlands. I failed many times falling down, but there were always people to be surrounded and help me get back up. And that's the importance, and that's life. So in those swamps, in the wetlands, I learned the value of community and looking for mentorship and guidance and coaching. Those wetlands taught me that when I fell in some serious mud and I was very scared, and I was talking to Jude, I did a lot of screaming. But in those wetlands, when I was on the Jason project in the wetlands, I was able to learn that when I fail, there are people that are there that can help me get up. I just have to be surrounded by the right community because as leaders, you cannot lead by yourself. It really takes a community and a support system to do that. And that's what the Jason Project and the Jason Learning Experience is providing to you today, that they're getting people together to come talk to you and tell you that if you fail, that doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. It is not a period. It's more of a semicolon for you to change some things around and be that leader that you are destined to be. And so as you notice this is a picture actually of COVID. COVID created a lot of pandemic. It has caused us not to be together. It has caused a lot of maybe some family heartache. Many people have died and we have lost loved ones. And it's been a challenging time. And this one little cell has changed the face of what we know the United States and the world to be. But what if you guys were that? What would happen if you infected others with these leadership qualities that have gone before you? These are some leadership qualities that the Jason Learning Experience have taught me, starting as a 6th grade student at Aurora Middle School in Bedford Heights, Ohio. So how can you be those changes? How can you exude those qualities? And so this helped me create a nonprofit called the Pharmacy Initiative Leaders, where we are solely there to empower underrepresented individuals to succeed at every stage of their pharmacy journey. And that's through authentic support and connection. So we're all about increasing diversity. We're all about increasing the pharmacy profession, but we're really about promoting you as a leader. So what is your mission? How do we build upon those things? How do we amplify? How do we cultivate those skills to know what you want to do? And so once again, as I mentioned with the wetlands, I had to have coaches that picked me up and pushed me forward. And as I was saying earlier today, you coach me on how to film and how to broadcast. When you're talking about very complex material, how do you broadcast that information to the masses that are trying to learn about the wetlands from you? And so we have a coach program where really we're all about you. So we're going to industry, beyond any clinical things that we're doing, any academic and research things that we're doing. The most important thing we're trying to do is create that pipeline of leaders because leaders are the ones that are changing the face of healthcare. And we have to change the face of healthcare, not just in those traditional pathways, but also those non-traditional pathways. And that is why we seek to be at every single stage of your journey. And so that's something that I was able to do, helping create a nonprofit with my fellow co-founders. Their names are George and Anya, Brian, and myself. And then we also have a fifth one. Her name is Martine. All of us collective help create additional leaders. But notice what I said, it's not just me. It won't be just you. It's going to take that culture. And that's what the Jason Learning Experience is here to do. We're here to create a culture to really provide that platform for you to build upon. And that's what they did for me. And so I want to just briefly say thank you so much for the honor. That's a little bit about my journey, very broad spectrums. We can get into some details from Jude's questions or questions that you may have. And it's just such an honor to really give back to an organization that has given so much to me. And that was back in 2005 and really before when I was in sixth grade. So truly an honor, and I will turn it back over to Jude.
Joshua, you made me tear up. Just a little bit. I mean, it's so awesome to hear about your path and this nonprofit that you and your co-community leaders have created is just, it sounds amazing. And I want to come back to that at the end when we talk about what you might make recommendations for students. I also like the way you described yourself as a forever student.
Yes.
But I'm not going to let you get away without telling the Oyster Story.
Yes. Okay, I'm pretty sure they had the video somewhere. Hopefully they don't show it to you guys. But I was with the infamous Dr. Earl Melanson. He's such a phenomenal researcher, advocate. Hope if he sees this, Dr. Earl, hope you're doing well. I do miss you, sir. Hopefully we can connect sometime. But he was a phenomenal researcher, and he was big on oyster and the ecosystem of oysters and how they impact the wetlands and how some of the chemicals within the oyster, how that impacts. And it's such a phenomenal gentleman. And one of the things that we got to do is, I think it was dealing with fear factor. And each of the sections had some kind of fear that they had to do. And people over time heard about me and eating this oyster because I never ate a live oyster. They make you eat it live on the broadcast. This is real live broadcast. And somehow or another, I always got chosen. And I had to eat the oyster. And when I eat food, I chew it. And the oysters, especially live, you're not supposed to chew it. I chewed it, and this came from the bayou, and it was just nasty, and I just went crazy. It was a nasty face. It's just, ugh. And I ate the heart. It's just, yes, it's not a good feeling, but yes, people really got significant enjoyment, especially Dr. Earl. And yes, it was great.
Have you eaten any since?
No, not live. No. As I told you guys in 2005, we are now in 2021. I've maintained my integrity, right? I don't eat live oysters.
Thank you for sharing that. And you answered some of the questions that students submitted. So I wanted to kind of go back in, what is it that you like most about being a doctor of pharmacy?
Yeah, the one thing I like most, I'll take it from a practitioner side and I'll take it from a leadership standpoint. From a practitioner side, the pharmacy is always changing. There's always new drugs. There's always new products that are out there to either treat disease or prevent disease or to stop the progression of the disease. And so to always stay on the forefront lines of how do we best take care of patients, how do we evolve clinical practice, is an amazing thing to me. And it continues to do your sciences and utilize your research. You never get away from math. So when you're calculating doses, you still have to calculate it. So students, please don't feel like math, you're never going to use math again. You will. When you count money, you use math. So, and everybody wants to have money, right? So it's very important that we stay up to date. And so that's a tremendous thing that I enjoy doing. And then from a leadership standpoint, I always love developing others. So that is why I chose this path in the profession. I love seeing ideas develop. I truly love seeing people develop. When you make somebody else's goal your goal and you're able to cultivate that and see it through, it just does something for me. And so I think that's the most important aspect of why I chose this career field.
Now, do you do any kind of ongoing research in your current position?
So that's a great question, Jude. And so I don't do table research. So what I did with Dr. San and what a lot of pharmacists do, maybe in the academic medical centers, that we do have pharmacists that are strictly doing research. They're looking at studies, they're at tabletops, they're combining chemicals. There's some that pharmacists that work in the FDA and the CDC, and they're doing that research and trying to take a pharmacist perspective on that. Or they're working at universities, which you guys may be attending if you're going into pharmacy school, but you'll have professors that do tabletop research, and that you can be a part of as a student, which I highly encourage you to do if you don't have that opportunity. But since graduating, I do more practice-based research. So how do we utilize this drug and evaluate the use of that drug? How do we save money? I do more of that practice research or population health research where, okay, this group of individuals has this kind of insurance. How do we make sure we impact their care? What needs to be on the formulary? So a formulary is a list of medication that you can choose from that you utilize to treat patients, and also that it is cost effective for that patient or that family member. And so I do that kind of research, so more practice based than our traditional research that I was able and fortunate to do with the Jason learning experience.
That's so cool. What is your work environment like, and what kind of tools do you use on a regular basis?
So a lot of tools or transferable skills that I utilize in my job is communication. So one of the things that my Residency program director, Dr. Divya Varki, she will tell you, she always instilled it's it's very important how you manage the message. Managing the message is key. So how I talk to different colleagues of mine, my team members that report to me, communication is always key. Written or oral, and especially with your body language, making sure you're open and you're even having those crucial conversations. Those are some skills that I have, that I do on a day-to-day basis. Reviewing reports and making sure that we're meeting our metrics in order to help advance patient care is something that I do, as well as trying to stay involved. So professional involvement may not be a transferable skill, but it's a transferable community that can really help guide and motivate and strengthen some of the skills that you may be lacking in. So staying involved professionally helps me keep my skill sets up on certain disease topics or certain leadership principles that are awesome. And so I still am able to do that and bring those skills or bring that knowledge to our team. So those are a few things that I use on a day-to-day basis.
What's a typical workday like for you?
I don't know if I ever have a typical work day. And leadership, you never know what you're walking into. But I would say a lot of times people in admin will say, "Oh, a lot of meetings. You attend a lot of meetings." But I think it's more than that. You're creating reports. You're creating different things. You're creating different communities. You're creating different partnerships. So you may have to have a meeting before a meeting to make sure you're on the same page with a team member. You may have to do some research and education and training in order to be effective in your communication when providing a presentation to maybe a C-suite. So your chief executive officer, your chief pharmacy officer. You may have to meet with a resident. So you may be training students. So as an admin person, you're still in the clinical trenches training students. You may have to put on your white coat. You may have to give a vaccine. So within COVID, I was able to administer several hundreds of vaccines personally myself. It's not just about leading, it's really about being on that front line and being effective on the front lines in that charge. So you never know what you're going to expect. Back at Hopkins, there could be certain days where I would have to round with physician. I'm a manager, but I have to round. I still have to keep up my clinical skills. So I would say there's not a typical day, which is the beauty of admin because you are trained to be able to handle different sorts of things, but also you can pivot in so many different careers in the profession because of that training, because of your background, and because of your relationship building skills.
Wow. So in your current role, about how many people do you work with, and how much of a team effort is it?
I work with a lot of people, but I would say I have, as far as direct reports, I have almost 40. So I'm hiring a supervisor to kind of help me with that. It's a lot of people. But so I work with them on a day-to-day basis. But as a collective team, we have a very close-knit leadership team. I work with Sylvia. She's our quality and safety manager, who also is a pharmacist, but she really focuses on the system quality efforts. So, how do we make sure we're not giving the wrong medication to a patient, or how are we making sure that our standards are still being upheld? And so, I work with her a lot by building dashboards and metrics. I work with her boss, the director Juan. I work with her a lot to make sure that we are keeping in track with the residency program, that our clinical specialists are still seeing different things. So depending on your need, depending on the knowledge base that you're lacking, but you know someone else exists, you can work with anybody. I work with nursing, I work with physicians, I work with dietitians, I work with social work, care coordination. So I work with different people every day. Um, so on a regular basis, who knows? I could be going through the whole gamut of healthcare professionals, or I could be really focusing on my team, which includes pharmacists and technicians.
Wow. Geez, yeah, you have to be very, very organized. And you mentioned math early on. What math material or skills do you use most often in your work? And you've mentioned metrics a couple
Yes.
of times. So I think those two are connected. Can you
They are
explain a little bit?
connected. So I utilize a lot of math because depending on the number of doses that you dispense for maybe a high cost medication can equate to either revenue for a clinic, or it could equate to maybe we're overspending on a medication and we need to kind of pivot what we do for a certain therapy. But also, there's sometimes where I have to calculate a dose. So, say if there was an error, so we're administering a medication to maybe a pediatric patient or maybe an adult patient, and they had a severe allergic reaction. Well, did we give the dose a higher dose than we should have? And so I will look at certain labs in their chart and then do some comparison, and that will take math. So did we overdose, or did we underdose the patient? Was the weight correct? So you have to get all this data from the patient's chart, and then you have to actually do some math, and what we call pharmacokinetics. And so that is very important that we have to do. And I still have to sometimes do that if I want to check behind either one of my practitioners or my technicians as they're making IVs. So, all very important things that we do on a day to day basis. We do have a lot of computers nowadays that will do that. Excel will help with database generation, but sometimes you still have to go double check and check that math. So, like I said, students, math will probably never go away, especially if you stay in STEM.
Very, very cool. So we have some student questions about your career path, which you've mentioned some of them. So how would you describe yourself as a kid?
Oh wow. How would wow. That's a great question. I would say my mom would say I was very bossy. I don't think I was bossy, but maybe that's why I'm in leadership today. Um, I would say I'm very inquisitive. I always ask a lot of questions. My mom always said I always had to know the why. I always had to ask those questions. Um, I think that helped me on my interview for the Jason learning experience because I was so inquisitive and I asked so many questions and I was always so excited. I still am. And so that has truly helped me in so many different ways. And I think that has always been instilled in me. So even one of my residency program preceptors, she had a picture of Curious George. And she said, you always should be curious. You should always ask questions and understand the why, because that's how you learn. Because if you stop learning, then are you really living? And so I think that's how I was as a kid. And it has just now continued on. Maybe not as often as I maybe should, because when I was a kid, I was always asking questions, but definitely staying into that Curious George mindset.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you've mentioned, when you were in sixth grade, Kim Rado was your teacher. She's still involved with some of us at Jason.
Yes.
Were you when did you kind of get into the science and math component? Was it about sixth grade or maybe before that? And how did that go through high school?
I would say sixth grade is what did it, because I had no idea about Jason until I came to Aurora and was in Kim Radio's class, and she really it made it fun. So we had different things hanging down. I think that at that time was Frozen Worlds. That was the expedition that I remember was sixth grade. And then she had all of these things hanging down. We decorated the rooms, and all of our core competencies within our classroom had something to do with Jason. And then it all tied together. And I think I was like, whoa. We went to Case Western Reserve in Cleveland, Ohio, and we saw the broadcast. Little did I know I would be on that same broadcast. I did not know at the time. It's so funny. Um, but we went there and it was just so cool. Like there was smoke and there was like ice hanging down. There was like all these kind of things. So as a kid, you're like, where am I? And everything was dark and you felt like you were there. It was such a cool field trip. And I said, this is science, this is math. I could do this. And I just loved it. And then long story short, since I matriculated from sixth grade, it always was very much a part of me. And then I get to ninth grade, and there was this opportunity that Kim Rader reached out to me and said, hey, have you thought about Jason? And I said, really? You could do that in high school? I said, okay, well, I guess I'll try. And went back to Case Western, went through the process. And lo and behold, I became an Argonaut. And so, students, you never know the very platform or the very stage you're looking at, it could be you. And that has happened to me twice now. So never underestimate your power and your abilities and your platform, because really it can happen. Because I'll never forget going to that room and I said, wow. And I saw students and they were doing so many cool things in frozen worlds, and it was just amazing.
That's really, really awesome that you shared that. So you talked a little bit about when you went to school. So you have a bachelor's, a master's, and how many years have you, and your doctorate degree? So how many years have you been in school, and are you done?
Oh, I don't know if I'm done. 7 years, but fortunately, Ohio Northern was a direct entries program, so I actually don't have a bachelor's, so I didn't have a fallback plan. My first degree was my doctorate, and then everybody said I went backwards, so I got my doctorate, and then I got my master's through my residency program. So I would say I was in school at least a total of 9 years. Um, and so was able to do that 7 years in pharmacy school. Was a year deferred, so once again failure is an opportunity to learn and fail forward. And so 7 years in pharmacy school and then 2 years within the residency program, and that's how I got my master's. So 9 years, but am I done? I honestly don't think so. I really feel like another doctorate is probably coming, whether that's in like education or business, but I do feel that eventually I'm going to be back in school. I'm trying to avoid it, but I think eventually I'll be back in school.
You can try, you can always try, but yeah, so you answered my next question, which is what's next. So what are you excited about working on in the future? Not necessarily school, but what do you see as kind of next?
Oh wow. Um, it's a common theme lately. I don't know. It's all about finding your purpose and finding your niche. And so I will say that I'm in the process of learning that. Once again, you never stop learning, and I'm rediscovering that. And so I honestly I don't know. It could be we move up in health system. I don't feel like I'm done with health system, so it could be a directorship of some sort, maybe next. It could be pivoting and going to academia or going into industry, and exploring that avenue. I'm not sure. I still will be in the profession, but and of course, still doing my nonprofit work, but sitting maybe on a couple boards throughout. So, with leadership. And so going maybe back to Ohio Northern and serving on the board of trustees or the College of Pharmacy board is something that is of interest. Just figuring out ways to give back. Because I think whatever I do, it's all going to be about giving back. That's a common theme with me. And so I think that's something that's going to happen in addition to probably eventually maybe going back to school.
That is so awesome. So for students who would like to follow in your footsteps, would you have any advice to give them what kind of classes they should take or that you wished you had had in high school, but anything like that that you have advice for them?
Yes. Um, Once again, be an authentic leader. All of you are leaders. Don't let anybody else tell you differently. You are all authentic leaders, but be yourself and find out what you're passionate with. Just because you see my path doesn't mean that you have to follow it, because your path is destined for you, just like my path is destined for me. So I will state that. But if you're interested in learning more about pharmacy and getting involved, I would highly encourage you to stay, of course, in STEM. The Jason Learning Experience is a great way to get that foundation, but also maybe research some schools. Find out what the opportunities are at that school. Can you get involved in research? Do you like tabletop research? See if you can get involved there. Maybe shadow a pharmacist prior. So I shadowed a pharmacist in my senior year of high school and loved it and wanted to learn more about it. So you can do that. And then I would also say maybe expose yourself to different avenues in the profession. And then as you're picking schools, definitely seek out to do additional learning. I think postgraduate opportunities, whether that's in a fellowship of some sort or a residency of some sort, are very, very, very beneficial. But do not start at the end of your professional pharmacy journey in school. Start early, research, get involved, talk to people. And last but not least, understand that you can't do this by yourself. So, what that means is get a mentor, get a coach who is going to be on your personal board of directors. So, a national board of directors has a CEO, they have different titles, but a lot of times you need a professional board of directors, somebody that's going to be your influencer. So they're going to know the people to talk to. They're going to know who to connect with. They're going to do that. You may have a connector. They may physically connect you to people, opportunities, research things. You may have that coach where you need a vent, and then they're going to coach you through a process, or that mentor where you're learning from each other. Different people have a different strength that you will need in order to get to your next goal. So have that personal board of directors and surround yourself with that support, because you can't make it through this journey, because leadership is a journey, by yourself. So those are some of the things that I would think that would work well in your favor.
Very cool. Now, you have a lot of education. Are there jobs or careers along this similar path that don't require so many years of schooling that students might be interested in checking out?
Yeah, so you can also do maybe become a technician. A technician is somebody that is very, very, very important. And there are several technicians that have not gone to pharmacy school, but they are now supervisors, they're now directors in a health system. And they don't have to have a doctorate of pharmacy. They may have gotten a master's, but they haven't gotten a doctorate of pharmacy. They may have gotten certain certifications. So don't neglect certifications that can help you, but highly encourage you to still stay competitive, get the degree. But if that is not an area or your path, definitely try to do that. Do your research, and maybe you want to own your own independent. Maybe you want to own your own business line, or clothing line, whatever that is. Go out there and do the research, because you just never know what's out there. And just because you don't have a formal education doesn't mean you will not be successful. Finish high school, stay involved in the Jason learning experience, and see what opportunities are out there that you may not have to get the formal education. So I would say technician is a great opportunity. You may be a coordinator of some sort. These are certain things that you can do within the healthcare field that you don't need a formal degree on.
Thank you for that. And if you mentioned early on your nonprofit, which is just sounds, which as I was listening to you, is designed to support people who are possibly interested
Mhm.
and to build a culture. So if any of our student audience or others are interested, how do they find out more about your nonprofit group?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to pillsconnect.com. We have a website that you can connect with us there. You can email me. I am not opposed to answering your emails, having one-on-ones, calling you, whatever that may be. I'm always willing to help. You have my email address. So always feel free to reach out and never forget that we are here to support. We still connect. Jude has done a great job at still connecting all of the Argonauts in the past. And so that's the kind of culture that we're trying to create at the Pharmacy Initiative Leaders, similar to what the Jason Learning Experience has provided us. And so just like we can reach out to Jude and Jude reaches out to us, feel free to reach out to me and I'll be able to assist you.
I tell you, my smile can't get any bigger listening to you. So I think we have pretty much answered all of the questions we got from our audience. And so thank you, Dr. Blackwell, that's so cool to say that, for joining us and sharing your story. And thanks as well to the Office of Naval Research and our partners at the East Bay Educational Collaborative in Rhode Island for making today's program possible. For Jason Learning, I'm Jude Kessel. We'll see you next time.